Since every single one of us is intrinsically unique, I really believe that when it comes to creativity, there is no such thing as good or bad. What we're really trying to assess is it effective or ineffective? If we focus our attention on how effectively have I achieved what I set out to achieve, that tiny little change in attitude opens up a world of possibility. Hello, my screenwriting friends, and welcome to another episode of The Feedback Loop. This is the final episode of the first season of this series, where we do a deep dive into professional screenwriting feedback. We basically take the first 3 pages of a different writer's script each week. We go through them word by word, page by page, with the writer on the line so that we can discuss with them anything that's working, or if something's not working, try to figure out maybe a way to make it work more effectively. And my whole goal with the series is to help you understand what the script looks like from the producer's perspective, or from the reader's perspective, the person who's on the other side of the table. My name is Jeff Ballo, and I spent nearly 20 years searching for material to produce. In that time, my production company received nearly 30,000 project submissions. I personally read about 7,000 screenplays. I've worked with thousands of writers all around the world, and I can tell you that the vast majority of what gets written and gets submitted is simply not viable for the producer or production company. And this is the reason, part of the reason, why producers and production companies generally won't accept unsolicited screenplays, because you have to dig through a mountain of material that's just not viable to find those little needles in the haystack. If we can help you write material that lands the way you actually want it to land, create better quality stories that land more effectively, and give the reader that kind of emotional, engaging ride. Producers are always looking for material. This is the unspoken reality of it. We're going to be making product. There's tons of opportunity these days. There is this voracious appetite for content from the audience. Somebody's got to write that. We just need to make sure that when you do write that, you write it in a way that it can actually connect. So the point of the series is to hopefully help bridge that gap a little bit. Now, today's pages that we're going to be looking at come to us from a writer based out of Texas in the United States. This writer's name is Keith Love, and his script is called The Crossover, which he classifies as a thriller. Now, Keith is on the call, and in fact, this particular session took a couple of interesting turns, which take us into territory that's often hard to fully explain to writers. I think there are lessons and insights from this particular session that I don't know that we could have gotten to or found in any other way. So I'm really excited for you to watch this episode. I'm really excited for you to glean some of these insights from it. And I'm actually quite excited that this is the finale for season 1. I really think this is a powerful session if you choose to focus on what the insights actually are. When we finish talking to Keith, we're then going to look at the first 3 pages of a familiar script, a story that probably everybody knows, maybe everybody loves. In this case, we're going to look at the first 3 pages of the Oscar-nominated screenplay for The SHAWSHANK Redemption. Now, I used to use this as my example script in my live screenwriting workshops, so I know this project upside down, inside out, back to front. The SHAWSHANK Redemption, I think, is in many ways almost a quintessential example of effective screenwriting, of effective storytelling. If you're not a fan of the prison genre, you've never seen this film, do yourself a favor and have a look. It's not what you would maybe think it is, and there's something very distinctly special about this particular film. There are also parallels in some of the things that I talk about with Keith to what the Shawshank Redemption does really well, so we can sort of put a button on some of those insights and lessons that we cover there along the way. So I hope you enjoy that. Remember, as always, that the feedback loop is a deep dive into screenwriting feedback, so grab yourself a drink, find yourself somewhere comfortable to sit, get something to take notes with, and sit back and enjoy this, the final episode of this season of the Feedback Loop. Fade in. Exterior Los Angeles night. Jake, 31, runs his fingers through the thick ivy that covers a stone wall. He walks slowly toward a misty corner, then stops. His dark eyes look back. He then grabs some of the longer vines and twists a braided knot. He turns back to find a man, 40s, who stands at the corner. Jake, where the fuck did he come from? The man turns to walk away. Jake trots across the street after him. Jake continued. Hey, wait a second. The man stops, exhales a cloud of cigar smoke up into the fog. Finally, he turns around. The tilted fedora on his head complements the wide cut of the dark suit he wears. He looks like someone from the 1920s. Man, what is it that I can do for you, little boy lost? Jake involuntarily cracks a grin under his 3-day beard. Jake, I'm not lost, but I do need your help. I'm looking for someone. Man, that could mean someone is also looking for you, too. Jake, she isn't expecting me here in L.A. Man, no, it's Los Angeles, kiddo. The city of angels, understand? Jake, yeah, okay, whatever. The man turns away. His eyes roll like he was truly offended. Jake continued. All right, look, I'm sorry, okay? I really need to find the Roosevelt Hotel. My friend might be there. Man, well, tonight may be your lucky night in more ways than one. A good friend of mine happens to run that joint. Jake, cool. What's your name anyway? Man, call me Thomas. And you are? Jake, I'm Jake. Thomas, then follow me, Jake, but stay close as a snake, 'cause what you see and what will be are two very different things in this city of angels. They walk down a foggy Hollywood boulevard toward the dim letters at the top of the hotel. A rather tall man, 50s, exits the dark hotel foyer. Man, good evening, gentlemen. Thomas, Des, we were just coming over to see you. Des, I see that. So who's your friend? Jake, hello, yeah, I'm Jake. Thomas interrupts. He's looking for a friend of his. Des, really now? Jake, right. Well, I heard she might be here at your wonderful hotel. Des, she? Oh, a lady friend. Lovely. Thomas, yeah, he wants to surprise her. They all sort of laugh in that way you would at the sudden release of tension. Des, it's a surprise. Okay, I get it. Des walks over to Jake and puts his hand on Jake's shoulder. He nods his head as though to confirm a dark inner thought. Des continued, from out of town, huh? Jake, yeah, up north. Des, look, I'll make a deal with you, Jake. I'm going to introduce you to every dame in the place. Jake, okay, and Des, you'll show me where the body is. Jake, what? What body? Dez's hand is still on Jake's shoulder. He grabs hold of the jacket and yanks him closer. Des, the one you go back to. Yours. Jake pulls back and races away. Des continued. You do not belong here, you fraud. You are not one of us. So these are the pages that we're going to talk about today. Overall, my first impressions of this are that Keith established this as a thriller, and the way these first 3 pages read to me, it's more like maybe almost mystery fantasy type. He's obviously a guy that's coming in, found himself somehow in another time and place, maybe an angel, the afterlife kind of a situation. There might be a supernaturally element sort of going on here, but I'm not necessarily getting thriller out of it so far. We see this setup at the end that leads to, you'll show me where the body is if I show you the girl. What body? Yours. So maybe they're demons and they want to take his body over or something like that. We'll get into some of the specifics of that when we talk to Keith. But the point is, my point on reading and reacting to it is that it's a little unclear. And it starts off without really establishing our place. One of the things that I've talked about throughout this series so far is we have to be really specific with where we are, right? So exterior Los Angeles. There's no exterior Los Angeles. Los Angeles is a city. So the exterior has to be a location. So what we have like right off the bat is exterior Los Angeles night. If a producer reader reads this slug line alone, you're already going to have trouble connecting them with this project because it's clear from literally the first line. that the writer isn't quite clear on how to establish or what the slug line's for and how to establish it. Then we run into, when Jake's running his fingers along this thick ivy. He walks around a corner. He twists this knot. Like, I'm not even after having read the first 3 pages, I'm not sure what this means or what the relevance of this is. But the one thing that it's not doing is it's not establishing the scene. It's not establishing the situation, right? It's not sort of bringing us into this world. If this is going to be a sort of magical mystery environment, it's a little bit of fantasy, a little bit of, the demons or whatever, we really need to begin with establishing that. Pretty much all of the, not all, I don't want to say all of them, but a majority of the projects that we've seen on this series, and certainly the vast majority of screenplays that I see in general, run into this very problem, which is why I'm kind of lingering on it a little bit, which is that you're not really establishing the world, setting up the place for us first, and then pulling us into the story. Like we're sort of just getting thrown into it. We have some dialogue issues where we have the sort of back and forth when a character says, yeah, okay, whatever, I'm always a little suspicious. Or when they go, cool, what's your name? My name's this. What's your name? My name's this. We can cut that down. But what is cool about this, or what could be cool about this, is this mysterious demon. I'll trade your body for the person you're trying to find. There's some maybe magical world here that could be quite fascinating to go into. So you run the risk. What often happens with a producer, production company, reader looking at a project like this is like, okay, there's clearly ideas here that I might be fascinated by, but it's not presented in a way that's initially pulling me in and letting me trust that they're going to be fully realized. And so will I keep reading? Won't I keep reading? Not really sure. I'd probably keep reading this one give it another 5 or 10 pages just to see where it goes from here. But depending on the day, I might not. So let me get Keith over, and we'll have a conversation about what his intentions are, and go from there. So Keith, are you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Ah, there you go. How are you?
Oh, I'm pretty good.
How was it hearing someone else read your pages?
Oh, it was cool. You were. You weren't trying to act it out or express it necessarily. No. You pretty much read it straight, yeah. But that's fine. What I was surprised about was the mistake I made on the first slug line, because I meant to say downtown Los Angeles.
Okay. So even downtown, though, let me pop this on here. Even downtown, though, is a little bit unspecific. It's still too big a space. Like, are we outside City Hall? Are we outside?
Well, it's like an establishing shot of the skyline of Los Angeles.
Well, so then you would basically start with the establishing shot of the skyline, and then we're outside of a building. Do you see what I mean?
Right.
So you could go fade in a beautiful establishing shot of downtown Los Angeles, right. Modern day. Are we modern day, or are we not? Because you did say that he looks to be from the 1920s.
No, it's modern day. It's present day.
Okay. So, but you say that your tone of voice tells me that it's sort of obvious, but it's not necessarily obvious, right? So once we see that he looks like he's out of the 1920s, immediately the reader goes, "Wait, but are we?" Right?
Actually, you know what? It's modern day as far as Jake is concerned. Mm-hmm. That character that he's talking to is from the 1920s.
I sort of assumed that based on where it went, but right. When I'm first reading it, I don't know that, and so when I'm first reading it, what's going to happen is it's going to put confusion into my head at certain points, and not that you won't clear up that confusion, but I am going to disconnect a little bit subtly and unintentionally, unconsciously from the story because I'm confused by it. Does that make sense?
Well, I understand. Yeah, I understand the possibility of that, but that's why the establishing shot, Jake himself, in no way indicates he's from the 20s. He's going to be fully viewed as someone in present day. He looks at the guy who is dressed like he is from the 1920s. That should not cause any great confusion about the story. It's this particular character. Why is he appearing as though he's from the 1920s? I can see that coming up, but I don't think that's a problem.
Well, you might not think it's a problem. I'm telling you it is. So you can take my advice or not. I want you to understand the reasoning behind what I'm saying. So it's not just what you've written. It's how these things are going to affect. Overall, these 3 pages, I think I know what you're trying to do, but they don't really do them in the way that you're wanting them to do them. They're not quite landing the way that you're wanting them to because we haven't really established the environment first and pulled me into that story in that way, right? So I'm not thinking a period piece at all until I see that he looks like he's someone from the 1920s. And then I go, he looks like he's somebody from the 1920s. Wait, does that mean others do or Jake doesn't? Because you haven't specifically said, modern day, or you haven't, like if you just said exterior downtown Los Angeles modern day, cool. Then we get that picture. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying you have to do that. I'm just telling you that you have to be aware that little things like this may cause confusion in the reader, and if they do, you have to be hyper aware that every single word could create confusion. When we saw this guy turn around and we see the tilted fedora, and it's I got the impression of sort of like a Midnight in Paris or something, where it's a person from another era, right? So I think that's what you're going for.
Right. Yes.
I'm not saying it's that confusing. I'm saying that there is a moment that the reader is going to have instinctively of like, that's what I think this is, but is it?
Yeah, I know. I see what you're saying, but I'm thinking that if they do, it'll be more about him specifically and not the story itself, not the environment.
Except that I don't know who Jake is yet, right? So I don't know that Jake's the guy that I care about here yet.
I got you.
Simply because the way he's been introduced. So tell me about this first paragraph. Jake, 31, runs his fingers through the thick ivy that covers a stone wall. He walks slowly toward a misty corner, then stops. His dark eyes look back. He then grabs some of the longer vines and twists a braided knot. What's happening here?
Okay, you want to know what's happening beyond the 3 pages, or what?
Well, I want to know what's happening right here.
Yeah, okay. He's actually, all he is walking along a wall, running his fingers through the ivy.
Yeah.
Like, the ivy wall, like at Wrigley Field or something.
Okay.
And he stops, looks back, and he does grab some vines and ties a knot. And
why?
And to locate where he came through at, basically. You're not going to know that, but that's why he does it. He's marking a spot on that wall.
Okay, so here's the challenge that we always face as writers. Is you just said it right there. You're not going to know that, and you're right. I'm not.
Right.
So what my brain is doing as I'm reading every word that you've written is going, what does this mean? Why am I being presented with this information? Is this important? Do I need to know it?
Yes.
Is this important for later?
Yes.
Okay, you're saying yes, but I don't know that. You haven't earned my trust yet as a writer.
But you have to answer that question yourself when you ask it. You're not going to answer the question and get the answer all in the same sentence. So I can see the question coming up, but you will get the answer.
Yeah. So as a reader, you're always trying to figure out what's going on here. You're the writer. You're the writer. You know what's going on here.
Right.
I'm the reader. I don't know what's going on here.
You're not going to know what's going on every sentence along the way, because otherwise there'd be no suspense in the story, or you're psychic, one or the other.
So are you saying that this is suspenseful, this sentence? Because it's not suspenseful.
Not necessarily suspenseful, but the answer, if the question were to pop in your head about that specifically, is answered within the same scene, actually. which is
I disagree, because I've read this thing 4 or 5 times now, and I have no idea why he twisted braided knot.
That's not the completion of the scene. The scene is about 6 pages.
Okay.
You're not going to get the answer when you ask the question in the same paragraph.
Okay. So if it's important that he braids the knot, is it important that we have all this walkie-talkie, his eyes look back, and the misty corner and all this stuff?
Well, that's just him being introduced, actually.
Sorry?
Yeah, he's just being introduced as the first character you see on screen.
Okay, you just said that's him being introduced, but I have no idea what Jake looks like. I have no idea who he is. He hasn't been introduced. You're having him do things, but I don't know who he is yet. He's Jake. That's it.
He's Jake. He's 31.
Jake, and he's 31.
Yeah, and then later, he has dark eyes. That's there. So then later I say something about a 3-day beard. I don't do the introduction all in one dump. I like to kind of spread indications of who this guy looks like or who this girl is over a few paragraphs even. Not all at once, not in one big thick paragraph, giving you a full description of this person.
I agree. I agree. So here's I totally agree with what you're saying, but I need you to hear what I'm saying. And that is, your very first paragraph has given me little details that don't really add up to anything for me.
Okay.
As the reader, right? And so at this point, it's really easy for a reader to go, yeah, I'm out, and they'll put your script away.
Okay.
So what we need to do is we need to make sure that when you're first starting out with that introduction, you're giving us something to hang on to. If I know why it's important that he's running his fingers through, if I know why it's important that he's braiding a knot, or I see somebody braiding a knot in the vines, that's going to be like, what's that all about? Why is this man standing on this corner? You've set up this establishing shot. You have a guy at some ivy-clad wall tying a knot in the corner. That's going to be more fascinating as an opening idea. Then he runs his finger through the thing. We see the mist. It's like you're setting an ambience and you're giving me detail. I don't, as a reader, yet know if you're describing the curtains or not, right? So you may be describing irrelevant detail. I don't know, because I've read, I don't know if you know this, but I've read somewhere near 7,000 scripts at this point in my life.
Yeah, I know.
I have read so many scripts that I can tell you that the majority of them throw tons of extraneous detail at me that are really not relevant and don't tie back together in any way. So that's not your fault, but you're faced with that reality. Other people are throwing all this extraneous detail out there. If I read detail that looks like I don't know why this is relevant, my brain goes, is this extraneous detail? This might be extraneous detail. And then everything that is not 100% is going to reinforce that notion in my brain that was extraneous. And it's going to distance me from what you're trying to create. That's just automatic. It's not something, it's not personal. I'm not doing it because I don't like your writing. I
don't take any of this personally.
Well, I see you defending your position a bit.
Well, because the only thing I'm trying to defend, or even suggest, not that you're wrong, and not that your reaction to it is a certain way. You're like saying most readers react a certain way.
Yes.
All I'm saying is though, as a reader, if you read a novel, say I'm gonna read a book, and you're enjoying the story, you're not looking for questions to pop up in your head that you're going to answer before you turn the page.
No, but every word along the way is going to build your experience. But it's not going to be resolved right then and there. I didn't ask for it to be resolved. I said I need to know that there are 4 sentences here. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, probably 40, 50 words right there. Are they all necessary at this moment in the story to establish this world and make me know what's going on and who am I supposed to care about here, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if they are or not. I mean,
right. That's all I'm getting at. I'm not telling you what to do here. I'm just saying when I read these, and I have read these 3 pages now probably 6, 7 times, And I still think there's like, you could do all that in one sentence. What's coming across there. And what you're describing, the braided knot thing is really important. Bang, that's an interesting image to open on.
Okay.
Because,
I got this, so you said I should be starting with that.
But why is it an interesting image to open on? It's an interesting image to open on because it's so unusual. It's so out of the ordinary. And so my brain is going to go, what is this? What's going on? Why is this guy tying ivy on a wall? He's not decorating anything. What is that? And then I'm going to go, who is this guy?
It's not your normal wall. That's why.
But you know that. I don't know that yet.
You don't need to know it at that point. That's what I'm saying.
I understand. But if you're just describing stuff, I'm not going to care to learn. Because you don't understand. This is the thing writers don't quite understand. There are hundreds of scripts waiting to be read. Hundreds of them. At the end of the day, when you're evaluating scripts, when you're looking at scripts that are coming in, you need to know that this writer is able to deliver the goods right off the bat. Now, I know you think that the Los Angeles thing is a tiny deal, but that sets the whole tone. That makes me go, is everything that follows really going to be up to speed? Well, I don't know.
Okay,
right?
that could, yeah, but I mean, there is something you're going to overlook. Now you make a mistake in the slug line as far as it not detailing where we are in Los Angeles or the shot that you are actually seeing being a shot of the skyline of LA. I mean, that I understand what you're saying there.
But you understand what I'm saying from a narrative standpoint, but you're not understanding what I'm saying from a writer-reader standpoint. From a writer-reader standpoint, in order for me to want to read your whole script as someone looking for projects, in order for me to want to read the whole script, I need to know from the very beginning that I can trust that if I give you 2 hours of my time, they will be well spent and the experience will have been totally worth those 2 hours. Because if not, I got other scripts to read. That's the reality that you face. That's not me being an asshole. That's the reality that you face.
I understand.
And so every word on your page has to reinforce this is going to be a great read for you. So if the first paragraph, your opening paragraph, makes me go, is that what like why? I feel like this hasn't been tightened up enough yet. So if that's my feeling after the first paragraph, you're reinforcing the idea that, that other script might be more interesting. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying, and I understand that possibility of occurring as a possibility. All I'm saying is, it's not so clear.
I don't want you to defend your position because I know how much this means to you and I know how much time you've probably spent on this. And this is why feedback is fraught with danger because A, there are 1,000 things I can talk about, and B, I do not want to offend or disrespect the time that you've put into this. I'm not trying to do that at all.
Yeah, I know that.
No, but if you defend what you've done, then you're not hearing the fix.
No, I heard your problem with what's been done. I haven't heard fix.
Sorry?
I heard what your problem as to what's been done, but I haven't heard a fix.
Really?
Well, I heard you say cut it out.
No,
they say go straight to the shot where he's tying the knot.
That's not what I said. I've said we have to establish this situation first. We need if you have the establishing shot in there, everything's different. If you then start with a guy braiding something on the wall, we have something to go, what's that? Tell me more. If we have something saying, what's that? Tell me more. Now I want to know who this guy is. What's he doing? He sees a guy over there in the corner. He runs after him. Okay, is that tied to the braided knot? I don't know. But the way it is now, the braided knot's the very end of this paragraph after meandery stuff, which I can't quite tell. His dark eyes look back. It's very describe-y, right? So the describe-y is not a problem necessarily, but as a reader, I'm just telling you how it reads as a reader. As a reader, it's like I don't have a narrative to hold on to yet. And I need a narrative to hold on to right at the beginning. I need something that makes me go, what's going on here? And you think the braided knot does that, but because you put it at the end after this meandery stuff, your image order is out of order. Because of that, it's not a hook for me at that point, because I'm not seeing that as being pulling me into your story. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so let's keep going. He turns back to find a man, 40s, who stands at the corner. Where the fuck did he come from? So your first line is, where the fuck did he come from? But this is what I'm saying. If we don't know who he is, we don't know what he's like. Where the fuck did he come from is a very abrupt first line. I don't have the without the establishing, without the pulling us into this scene. I don't have in my mind the logistics. So there's a man who stands on a street corner. He says, "Where the fuck did he come from?" I don't know that he wasn't there before, right? So if you say he walks slowly toward a misty street, stops, there's nothing saying that it was an empty street. There's nothing to say that it was long expanse of nothing, mist covering all the, and then he ties. If you wanted to set it up that way, you could set up the establishing. You could show the empty streets. You could show the mist. You could go, okay, now he looks around. He ties the knot on the with the vines on the corner, and then as he turns around, oh shit! Then there's a guy. Then where the fuck did he come from? Cool. Then I'm going, where the fuck did he come from? Do you see what I'm saying? But right now, it's just jumping straight into it. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, don't get deflated. The man turns. The man turns to walk away. Jake trots across the street after him. Jake continued, "Hey, wait a second." The man stops. He exhales a cloud of cigar smoke up into the fog. Finally, he turns around, tilted fedora in his head, compliments the wide cut of the dark suit he wears. He looks like someone from the 1920s. I like all of this. I just wish it was told in half as much space. There's a lot of extras. Here's the thing: if you're going to take up 4 lines of, think of it this way. One page equals 1 minute of screen time, right?
Right.
So 4 lines here is close to an eighth of a page, close to 10 seconds, 12 seconds, something like that, to do what? That's really all we're seeing, right? So what I'm saying is, we want action within that, right? So we want we want more than just a describey. Do you know what I mean? So yeah. It's, if you have him doing something or saying something, cool. If he's not doing or saying anything here, then abbreviate the description so that we can keep the story moving forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, so man says, "What is it that I can do for you, little boy lost?" So that's a reference to something. What is that a reference to?
Oh, no, Jake, he said, "Hey, wait a second."
Sorry, can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Because he's saying, "Hey, wait a second." Previously.
No. When he says, "What is it I can do for you, little boy lost?" Oh. So but little boy lost is a weird thing, right? And then Jake involuntarily cracks a grin. It felt to me when I read it like, is there some unspoken reference-y thing going on here?
All he said was, "Hey, wait a second."
Yeah.
Then you have him blowing the smoke out.
Yep.
The guy turns around.
Mm-hmm.
And he asks him, "What is it that I can do for you?"
Yeah.
Little boy lost.
Okay, but little boy lost is a weird phrase, right? You even agree.
Well,
that
is a real phrase unless this guy is lost. Or you feel like he's somebody lost, walking around lost.
Right. Okay. Okay. But if he's saying little boy, I thought that was like a literary reference or something when I read it.
No.
Okay. You say no, but because it's an odd phrase, I've never heard anyone say little boy lost, except I think I've heard it in a literary context. I can't remember, but it's
from originally a literary, source.
Yeah.
And it's about someone who was lost, I believe. I don't know the actual story, but it's not a completely uncommon phrase.
I've never heard it before, other than maybe in relation to a literary reference. But so you have to be aware that your reader's going to be trying. Look, the thing is this: the reader's trying to figure out what's going on through this. They're trying to figure out what are you giving me clues? Or are you telling me things right on the nose? Is this important? Is that important? So
no, it's just a figure of speech, kind of. That part is
okay. But then you may want to change that language so that it's not confusing, right? Or when he involuntarily cracks a grin, what's that about?
That's like when you kind of laugh without even trying.
No, I know what it is, but like, why is he doing it?
Because he found it amusing for him to call him that, I guess. I mean, that's when he says, "What can I do for you, little boy lost?" That amused Jake to a point where he kind of cracked a smile.
But Keith, hang on. You were just telling me a second ago it's a very common phrase. If it's a very common phrase, why would he crack again hearing it?
It's very common. I think it's just it's a common phrase that people have heard of before. It's not something that is completely, out of the lexicon.
It is out of the ordinary, and that's why he cracks a grin. That's my point.
Okay, you're from Australia, correct?
No, I'm from Los Angeles.
Okay, and you mean to tell me you've never heard that phrase?
I have, but I think it's in relation to some literary reference. But I don't want you to miss my point. It's enough out of the ordinary that you yourself wrote that the character involuntarily cracks a grin at the phrase.
So what is the problem then? I agree with that. So what are we talking about?
So the problem is that as the reader, I'm going, is there something more going on here? What is it that I can do for you, little boy lost? Sounds to me like a literary reference. He cracks a grin at it. Is that simply at the fact of the phrase, or is that they have some shared knowledge already, or is it that fact that there's the literary reference that I'm not remembering?
The same way you found it amusing is the way Jake finds it amusing, by the phrase alone.
Okay.
Now, I know what you're saying the reader might think, but I'm going by what you just said you thought, that it was amusing. You understand that part?
We need to get on the same wavelength, Keith. I'm not criticizing your writing in any way.
I'm not saying you are.
I'm not challenging the word phrase in any way. I'm telling you what the reader is thinking when they're reading these words. Now, I'm telling you microsecond thinking as well. So if I sit here and ponder this, it all makes perfect sense. But the first time I read through this, there are little micro thoughts that are happening as I'm reading.
Okay.
I'm sharing those with you because if I share with you those micro thoughts, you're going to see where the disconnect happens. I don't have the answers for how to rewrite your script because I don't know your whole script. And I don't know what your intentions are. So don't go, this is not a judgment.
I'm not saying you have the answers. I'm asking why. You're explaining to me why there's even a question.
Yes.
Okay, that part I get.
Okay, so there's no need to be defensive about it because at the end of the day,
I'm just saying the reason I wrote it was because it was the same reaction you had to it.
Yeah,
that's
but
why I wrote
we're describing two different reactions. You say little boy lost, he cracks a grin because it's a weird phrase. I thought, am I missing some connection between these two characters? Do you understand?
Yeah, I do.
Not just the phrase, but am I missing something? And the reason I'm asking, am I missing something in my own brain for a brief flicker of a second is because this hasn't been set up very well. Like I don't know who's who. I don't know what's where. I don't know what I'm focused on. So every little detail is like, wait, am I supposed to focus on this? Am I supposed to know what that reference means? Is that important to the story that I'm piecing together? Does it make sense? I can't. You have to talk to the microphone.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. It does. I understand what you're saying.
Don't go away. You're leaving.
Maybe I just gave the readers too much credit in terms of.
No, it's not that. No, what's happening is this is what writers do. And look, I've worked with tens of thousands of writers at this point. I'm not putting them all on you, but I'm telling you common things that I know I've done as a writer. I know all writers do. And one of them is you know your story intimately. You know the details, you know the texture, you know the color, you know how you would shoot it if you had a camera. You know all that stuff. I don't know any of that. And all you have are the words on the page to put that idea in my head the way you see it. Okay. All I'm telling you is that when I read these words, these are the things I'm thinking and feeling, which are clearly different to what you have in your head. So all we have to do is bridge that gap. If you don't hear what I'm saying because you're defending your point of view, That's okay. You're free to do that. You could chuck out anything I ever say on any of this stuff. But if you understand that gap, you can bridge it. If you don't understand that gap, you're going to be like, how come nobody's picking up my script? This is an amazing story. Why is nobody saying yes to this project? So it is what it is. I'm throwing it out there for you. So, Jake, right. I'm not lost, but I do need your help. I'm looking for someone. Wait. So, let me get this straight. This guy all of a sudden appears on a corner, and now he's going to go... He's challenged by the guy, and then he's going to go over to get his help?
Challenge? What do you mean? Challenge him.
The guy's trying to walk away. He says, wait a second. What is that can do for you, little boy lost? I'm not lost, but I do need your help. Why does he need his help?
The next sentence, he says he's looking for someone.
I can't hear you when you're not talking to the microphone.
The next sentence, he's saying, I'm looking for someone.
Yeah, okay. The next sentence, yes, but I may not ever read the next sentence as the reader. I need every sentence to build on what came before. This is my point. If my thought is, am I missing a literary reference? And then he says, I'm not lost, but I do need your help. I'm still responding to that in an earlier thought that I had.
Really? Are you really? Okay.
Yes, that's how reading works. Yes.
You're responding to Little Boy Lost.
Sorry?
You're still responding to Little Boy Lost?
I'm still, if you imagine how fast I'm reading, yeah, Little Boy Lost, he involuntarily cracks a grin. I'm going, in my mind, I'm doing the super slow motion for you. In my mind, I'm thinking, am I missing a literary reference? I'm not lost, but I do need your help. Like, I'm still, processing that question that popped into my head. Yeah?
Okay, I believe you.
Okay, you don't, but okay.
No, I do. I believe you.
No, you're
patronizing you.
You're patronizing me, and you're thinking that I'm slow because I'm not keeping up.
No. You're trying to give me the perspective from the reader, which is good, which is what this show is about. I'm only gonna know the perspective as the writer, and you're giving me clues to fix things that a reader might find problems with. That's what we're doing.
And what a producer is going to say yay or nay on a project for.
Right, I understand.
Right, but you're also going, you don't understand that?
Well, no, I'm saying why I wrote that way you asked me.
Don't talk too close to the microphone, otherwise it blows out. That's okay.
No, I'm just responding responding to your question, and I can only respond with an answer based on how I wrote it.
But so here's the thing. I'm not asking you to justify your writing. You can tell me to go climb a tree after this. You know what I mean?
No, you're not. I'm not trying to justify. I'm just trying to answer your question.
But you can take or leave anything that I say here. What I'm asking you to do is to understand the point that I'm making. I may not even be making it well, but there is a very specific point I'm trying to make here. And that point is not going to be grasped if you're defending why you've made the choices you have. You're free to keep those choices.
No, I understand the point. And when you ask me why did I do it that way, my response can only come from the perspective of the writer. I agree with the reader's point might not be as clearly understood as mine.
Okay. All right. So let's keep going, and we'll see if it clears up. Okay. So, man, that could mean someone is also looking for you too. So, as the reader, keep in mind, you set this up as a thriller, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, it's a supernatural thriller. I'm sorry for not clarifying.
But you can say I'm sorry for not clarifying. But you have to understand, when you say it's a thriller, I'm reading a thriller. If you say it's a supernatural thriller, I'm looking for the supernatural elements.
Right.
It's not an insubstantial mistake.
No, because you figured that part out yourself. That it was some it's afterlife kind of story.
Which anyone would figure out. The thing is, not anyone would get that far. And this is the point that I want anyone watching this to understand, right? Because it's not about whether we can figure this out. Yes, I can. I'm not an idiot. I can figure out what you're going for here.
Right.
My point is, in that moment, reading it the first time, these are the confusions which are going to cause me to detach, which are going to make me put your script aside and read another script.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah.
Exactly. So this being I like the idea. I'm looking for someone. That could mean someone is also looking for you too. Odd thing to say, but maybe intriguing. In the context of it, weird.
But well, I'm also
going.
trying to give the character a little bit of not quirkiness, but I'm trying to give the character some. He's not, he's a character. He's a person. He's gonna do things his way. He's gonna say things his way.
That's fine. So she isn't expecting me here in LA. No, it's Los Angeles, kiddo, the city of angels. Understand? Yeah, okay, whatever. So I think part of my challenge here, and it's because the introduction, we're just sort of thrown into this a little bit, is these people are having a very casual conversation for strange, like they're talking together, they're talking to each other the way strangers wouldn't necessarily talk, which, okay, yeah, makes sense later, you're right. But in the first moment that I'm seeing it, it feels odd. Like I feel like there's a way we can present this that has the same effect you're going for, but that pulls us into the weirdness of this situation. That's all I'm saying. Okay. So when he says, yeah, okay, whatever, that's very dismissive, right?
Yeah, it is, sort of.
Why is he being dismissive? He's looking for help, right?
Well, yeah, he was just a little surprised that the guy kind of got upset over him calling Los Angeles L.A.
Did he get upset? Because that's not necessarily clear from that.
Well, there's the exclamation point. So
well, sure, but that could be no. It's Los Angeles, kiddo. He could be having this mischievous grin on his face like a weirdo. Well, here's the thing. You have to understand that is the way someone could interpret this. Just because you hear the line interpreted the way that you want doesn't mean that someone else is going to read it with that same interpretation. You give the same line to 100 different actors, you will get 100 different readings.
That's true.
So you have to think through what are the different possible reactions to this, and make sure that the language of the script is clear, so that I clearly get whatever the intention is behind it. That's all I'm getting at. So when he says, yeah, okay, whatever, I'm going, wait, I thought he was 31. That's a very millennial thing to say, right? I guess 31 is millennial. Do you know what I mean? Like, whatevs, pops. Like if he's got the mischievous grin, that works. If he's angry, I guess that works, but I don't know the context. It's really more the problem, the challenge that I have with it is that the context isn't necessarily established for us first. Maybe this would all read smoothly if we were pulled into it first. Right. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. So anyway, food for thought. Things to think about. So the man turns away. His eyes roll like he was truly offended. So the language of that line is it's very conversational the way it's worded. Like, have the man turn away offended. You know what I mean? An eye roll is very. I don't know if you've been here for previous sessions, but we've talked about blocking, actor blocking, camera blocking. Whenever you have an actor look away, roll his eyes, do some movement that doesn't really move the story forward, it's actor blocking. You're telling the actor how to do the job, right? So we want to try to strip that away as much as possible. If he turns away offended, fine. That is his reaction, right?
Don't put the gesture necessarily.
Yeah. Generally speaking, there are exceptions when the gesture is the narrative point, right? When it is the thing that's turning the story. But this is a reaction-y thing, and we kind of want to avoid that in general. So anyway, all right, look, I'm sorry, okay? I really need to find the Roosevelt Hotel. So the thing is, if I don't know who these people are, I don't know why if I don't know what you know about the performance, then all right, look, I'm sorry, okay, doesn't like, oh, I'm supposed to think you super offended him. Like, do you know what I mean? I'm figuring out after the fact what I was supposed to know from that earlier sentence, right? And and then as a reader, I'm behind the eight ball. Like, I'm feeling like I'm not sort of keeping up, or is it that the story's not presenting me with the cart to go along on the roller coaster ride? Right? So I really need to find the Roosevelt Hotel. My friend might be there. Well, tonight might be your lucky night in more ways than one. A good friend of mine happens to run that joint. Fine. Cool. What's your name anyway? Call me Thomas, and you are. I'm Jake. This is always the name exchange thing isn't really necessary. But if you have to introduce the names, just jump into it. We want to get there quicker. Cool. What's your name anyway? Whenever you have the word anyway, this I find to be, in general, one of those words that highlights that something's not tight, right? Because anyway means we've over said something, or we've gone anyway. Right. So it's like let's stop this from getting too long.
They had a prolonged thing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Call me Thomas, and you are. I'm Jake. You could just be. I don't even know that you need to know the names. Just give them the name.
Just cut Jake's first line out. Cool. What's your name anyway? Just cut that out and go straight to call me Thomas, and you are. I'm Jake.
Or call me Thomas. That's it. And then he can say Jake, or whatever. I'm not telling you what. I don't necessarily know what's right. I don't necessarily know what choices are going to be right for you. All I can tell you is that that kind of name exchange, again, if we look at it as the 1 page equals 1 minute thing, like think about how much space that's taken up. Like you wouldn't have a commercial run with just what's your name? My name's this one. You know what I mean? Like that's why that's why characters in movies don't say, okay, bye, love you, see you tomorrow, love you too, see you tomorrow. Like human phone calls do that, but movie phone calls don't do that because let's just get to the narrative, right? So, so then follow me, Jake, but stay close as a snake, because what you see and what will be are two very different things in the City of Angels. I actually really like that line because it's poetic and it's quirky. It's definitely quirky. Knowing that he looks like he's from the 1920s. And he has this, he's doing this poetry. He's like, is he a slam poet? I don't know what's going on here, right? So, okay, cool. What's that? And then they walk down. And this, to me, was like the first point where I went, I bet this is a supernatural thriller instead of just a thriller, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So just because it's like, okay, I think we're entering into some mysterious, something's going to happen here. Like we're walking through time or something like that. They walk down a foggy Hollywood Boulevard toward dim letters at the top of the hotel. A rather tall man exits the dark hotel foyer. We didn't have a slug line here, so we're not we've actually shifted locations.
Changed locations, right.
Yeah, so we probably want that. Good evening, because otherwise it's like all of a sudden there's this tall guy. And it's like, oh, we did some weird time jump. Which, if it is a weird time jump, pop that in there and then add to the weirdness thing.
Okay, but it wasn't really. I should have the slug line right above. They walk down a foggy. That should be the location change to just Roosevelt Hotel night.
I would probably have this at the end of it, and then have a new slug line after that.
Okay.
And then exterior Roosevelt Hotel, rather tall man exits the foyer. Done.
Okay, fine.
Good evening, gentlemen. Des, I would just give him the name Des already, because I know you're switching it because we don't know him yet, but we're literally going to know him right away. So just Des, because otherwise it's like there's 6 different names, but there's really only 3 characters, right? Because they're man. Wait, which one's man? Is this man number 2? Just little things like that will be strikingly confusing to a reader. And it's not that we can't figure it out. This is the whole point. It's not that we can't figure it out. It's that the first time through, it's going to confuse us, and therefore we're not going to love your script the way that you want us to. So, Thomas, Des, we were just coming over to see you. I see that. You always kind of want to get rid of that kind of a line. I see that is repetitive. It's a redundancy. We think of it this way. Everything that goes in your script needs to advance the narrative, needs to reveal character, or needs to get a laugh.
Right. And I really kind of wrote that line with him. He said it kind of snidely, like you're not even invited, and I see you're here. Like,
okay.
I see that kind of thing.
Okay. What you're describing there is that necessary for the story, not just for the color, the nuance of it, but for the actual narrative.
Not really. It's more for the character.
Okay, so then I would probably say you don't really need it. But
Okay.
if it's necessary for the story, or for some reason you think it's going to add dimensionality to your story, then you'd probably want to make sure, a rather uppity man.
Yeah,
You know what I
dude,
mean? Like
pair-
introduce him as a guy that, snooty running around, right? So then that way, when he says, "So who's your friend?" we're already going to assume it's a little snooty, right?
Okay.
Hello, yeah, I'm Jake. Thomas was interrupts. So we don't need this word interrupts, because if you just put a double hyphen right here, that's what a double hyphen is. It means the next thing interrupts it. So you don't need you don't want this Riley. Hello, yeah, I'm Jake. So again, we're introducing characters. Why does he need to know who your friend is? Right?
Well, because he really wants something from him, so he's kind of introducing himself. That's all.
Yeah, so think of it this way. Like in a movie, we're trying to figure out what's going on, right? So anytime we stop for pleasantries, we stop the flow of the narrative. See if you can find a way to keep your story flowing. Try not to stop the action and go, "Oh, I'm so-and-so. Oh, I'm so-and-so," right? Because the audience when we're watching the film, we're going to have actors that we're looking at. Right? So as soon as we see that guy, we know that guy for the rest of the movie. As soon as we see that guy, we know that guy for the rest of the movie. So to have them introduce themselves to each other we don't care. Like, you know what I mean? As from a story standpoint, don't need to watch it. Okay. Yeah. So, and just a little thing, but it takes up space and is important for flow as well. He's looking for a friend of his really now. I feel like there's more that could be said there. I don't know. Right. Well, I heard. Oh wait. He's looking for a friend. Really now. Right. Well, I heard she might be here at your wonderful hotel. How about just he's looking for a friend of his. Jake, I heard she might be here at your wonderful hotel. Right. Okay. And then forget she. Oh, a lady friend. Lovely. Because you see how that's kind of redundant, right? So just go, "Oh, a lady friend, lovely." And if we know that he's uppity or snide or gotta then we're gonna read every line with that tone.
That tone,
Right. Thomas, he wants to surprise her. They all sort of laugh in a way you would at the sudden release of tension. I know what you're talking about. But when you say, whenever I read this, they all. Well, I think there's a typo. They all sort of laugh in that way. It's like you as a writer are not. You're not. This line is not written with authoritative author language, right? So your action descriptions should be written as an authoritative author. So when you say something like they sort of laugh in that way you would in this kind of thing, like you're talking like this might be fine as a line of dialogue, like that kind of language, but as the writer, you're going to want to make sure they awkwardly laugh to release the tension. You know what I mean? Okay. Like tell us what it is.
Don't be vague.
It's sort of this kind of a thing. You know what I mean?
Right. Don't be vague at all.
Yeah. Authoritative. Yeah. Okay. So Des, it's a surprise. Okay, I get it. I didn't know what that line meant. So he wants to surprise her. Maybe just got it.
Okay.
Right? You know what I mean? Like, we want to really trim down all the excess stuff. Des walks over to Jake and puts his hand on Jake's shoulder. You could probably just kill that part of it. So Des puts his hand on his shoulder. Because walks over, you're thinking through the blocking, right? But just get to the, like, what's happening next. Okay. He nods his head as though to confirm a dark inner thought. Two things. Who's he? Is it Des nodding or is it Jake nodding? Secondly, to confirm a dark inner thought, I don't know what inner thought you're talking about. And so that sentence, all that sentence really does is put confusion in the mind of the reader. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
What was your intention with it?
Well, because, of course, I can't write the look on his face, but whatever. But when he walked over and put his hand on his shoulder, and then nodded his head because he reacted to the firmness of Jake's shoulder, the density of his shoulder. That's what's going on.
So Dez and these guys are spirits or something like that, and
Thomas, right?
And Jake's a bodied person,
well,
and so there's a certain dynamic at play here with that.
Yeah, Jake is actually someone who's an anesthesiologist who figured out a way to cross over to the afterlife 4 minutes at a time.
Okay, so here's the thing: is there a reason we don't know this at this point in the story?
Well, I didn't want to start off with him going through taking the drugs procedure and actually going through the wall and all that.
Well, okay, fair enough. You want to reveal that? That's fine.
Right, that's on the way back.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. But so, is there a reason that we don't want to have this be a moment where we go, "Oh, what is that?"
Well, that's what I'm trying to do. What you just
said.
Oh,
okay. So here's the thing. If that's what you're going for, then when you say he nods his head as though to confirm a dark inner thought, that is sufficiently vague that could mean 1,000 different things, right? So, but if he puts his hand on Dez's shoulder, fatherly or something, I don't know. Find a way to make that action happen, and then Dez has a moment of noticing the strength of the shoulder or something like that.
He nodded his head like he agrees with what he suspected. He nods his head when he puts his hand on his shoulder because I thought so, kind of thing.
I guess what I'm saying is I like the idea of him having this moment going, oh, right? But we're not getting that from that. So I don't know how you want to do it, but we if you can make that a little more clear,
okay.
I think that's gonna help, because what that's doing is adding questions. Like the reader's gonna go, what is that? Right? So it's like braiding the knot. It's like, that's weird. I haven't seen that before. Why is he doing that? Then I'm gonna follow the story. Then he touches his shoulder and he makes this look on his face like, hey, he's checking out this guy's shoulder. What's that all about? Right? So it's almost like these things, some of these things are here. Some of these things are not necessarily presented in a way that's clear that they're here. Right. But if we do make them clear that they're here, then the whole thing raises up a notch. See what I mean?
That's all I'm trying to do is raise it up a notch.
Yeah, absolutely. So from out of town, huh? Yeah, up north. Look, I'll make a deal with you. So here's the thing. Because I don't know that this is a spiritual mixing with the body, like this seems like small talk to a reader who's trying to figure out what's going on, right? If we already know some of those things we've been talking about, then this line of dialogue takes on a different meaning, which is the meaning that you're imbuing it with, right?
Yeah. Even the northern part, as in above the ground.
Right. There you go. It's a nice double entendre. But it reads as filler because I don't know what's going on. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So we either fix it by changing the dialogue or by changing the setup.
And I think what you said already about the beginning will solve a lot of that, because then they'll know.
I agree.
Okay.
I absolutely agree. So I think, because you got to understand, I was very confused about 2/3 of the way through this the first time reading it. When we got to the end and I saw what I thought you were trying to do, I went, okay, there's definitely something cool here. And then I sort of went back and looked at it and went, okay, well, it's kind of really not being set up right. But
the execution, as usual.
As usual, that's it's the challenge of this craft. It looks easy, but it's it's a bitch. Des, look, I'll make a deal with you, Jake. I'm going to introduce you to every dame in the place. Okay, and so this is another one of those lines that you know how it reads, but looks like filler to me. And keep in mind, all along I've been thinking, has he got a millennial attitude, right? Because of that thing we talked about earlier. Do you see what I mean? Okay, and whatever, this language is putting this idea into my head. So you always have to understand, this is why every word is important, because those early words are going to establish what my expectations are and how I read all the rest of the words.
Right.
So it's not necessarily this line is bad. It's that it's within the context of how I'm thinking about this thing. It's adding to my perception that this guy's a whatevs kind of millennial guy, right? So anyway, because I think I get what you're saying. Okay, and like he's right. Is that what he's doing?
Like, what do you want from me? That's what he's saying.
Right. So, yeah, we've got to clean it up somehow. I'm not sure. I don't have the specific answer, but I want you to know that's where my head is because of that, right?
Okay.
Des, you'll show me where the body is. What body? I'd probably get rid of what, or I'd emphasize it more. What body? I couldn't tell if he's guilty. Like, did he kill somebody and these guys know about it? You see what I'm saying? Like, because I don't know what's going on, I literally had the thought, did he kill? Is he guilty of a crime? And this is some big elaborate ruse to capture it? Like, this is where the mind's going as the reader. Like, there could be any of these kinds of stories. So we got to be careful with it. Maybe it's just what body. I know that probably would diminish it too. Like, it needs to be more of a moment. So... yeah, maybe this is.
I have to figure that out. Yeah.
Maybe it's a what, and then he like looks around and everybody's eyes are on him. What body, right? I don't know. I don't know. But Dez's hand is still on Jake's shoulder. He grabs hold of the jacket and yanks him closer. The one you go back to, yours. That's a typo, by the way. No apostrophe in that. The one you go back to, yours. Okay. Yeah, I was like, okay. So now I'm getting the sense that we're in this world and he's real and their spirits are like, it's piecing together as you go along. Yeah. He pulls back a race away. You do not belong here. You fraud. You are not one of us. Because of how this is all set up and how this unfolds, this seems a little like he's overly, offended by whatever's happened here. You know what I mean? Like,
no, but he's like the authority figure there. He's kind of like, the guy. Des.
Okay, and that's cool. I don't have a problem with that. Like, all your story and all your reasons and all that, that's all fine. But because of the way it's been presented, that's not necessarily that could be read a few different ways. To me, that's like, I don't know why he's so offended over that. Like,
well, I think they'd have more of a problem with what fraud is. What does it mean? What's a fraud in this particular case? He's saying you're a fraud because you're not actually dead, but no one's gonna know they're dead. So fraud means whatever. But
no, and that's cool. I don't know if you saw the movie Coco. It's kind of got
the cartoon. No, I haven't seen it yet.
You should. It's got it's a living boy who goes to the world of the dead with the
party
with
they have
deceased with all the deceased relatives, and it's a fantastic movie, by the way. Like, from a writing standpoint, lessons galore. I strongly recommend it to anyone. But it also has some of this kind of a thing in it, so. Not necessarily a problem. It's totally different story. But I guess my point is, if we don't know who Des is at this point, then when a character expresses an emotion, anger, rage, whatever it might be, incredulousness, whatever, it's incongruous as a reader unless you understand where that's coming from, or if you see how he got there. And you don't know maybe what's entirely behind it, but it still fits contextually with what happened. Whereas we're here, and it's possibly just because a lot of these ideas we've talked about aren't clear enough in the script. Maybe if they're clear enough in the script, this will come across the way that you're wanting it to. But just know that as the reader, as you're going through it, trying to make sense of that kind of stuff, and that's where the confusion happens. So often writers are you spend all this time in this world, and I know, because look, I've written tons of scripts myself, not necessarily great scripts, but I've written tons of them, and I know the work. I know you have to swim and live in this, and you know all the details. The hardest thing is that if you don't take them step by step, guide them through this experience in a way that's building, it's very easy for them to start having a different experience. And when they start having a different experience, all the things that you wrote take on different meanings, and all of a sudden it just gets jumbled. And I think that's kind of what's happened with these pages. And I probably would say it starts just with not establishing the place and pulling us into this quirky adventure right away.
It almost needs like a previous scene, basically.
Maybe
leads you into it more knowledgeable of what's going on.
Possibly. I'm a big fan of revealing things, so I don't necessarily want you to like hit the nail on the head with it. I don't necessarily want you to, here's what's happening, right? Like that's going to be too simplistic. Okay. But we have to have something to latch on. Think of it this way. Like, let's say a character's big journey through the story is he's going to run for president, right? But before running for president, like, you're not going to start off with him going, geez, I've decided to run for president. We don't know who the guy is yet, right? So you could start off with, I don't know. Oh my God, I'm so thirsty. I got to go get a glass of water. The tap's not working. What the hell is the tap's not working? Like, no, that's not the story we're going to be telling. But because he's now already in this little adventure, something's pulling us through the story. We can go through that story and then reveal, oh my God, it's part of the water crisis. Oh my God, it's part of, whatever, right?
Oh, okay.
Do you see what I'm saying? Like to reveal a story, we want to unfold that story, and that often means starting with something smaller, which is why I clung to that braided knot idea, because I like that idea. Like, that's an interesting visual image. It's just in the context of the way you're reading it for the first time, it's like, and then it doesn't come back later. 3 pages in, it's, you know what I mean? So yeah. So that may be enough to make us go, these streets. The other thing is, these streets should be empty. We need to see that these streets are empty. And then we have to turn around and the guy's there. Then all of a sudden it's like, wait, where are we? What is this? Tell me more. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that will help. I think that will really help the start of these pages.
But it's definitely in the beginning where the better interpretation of what follows needs to take place. All that.
The reality is, and this is what makes giving feedback difficult, is that the reality is I can't necessarily tell you that everything else that follows is going to work once you make those changes, right? But
it'd be more understandable, at least. That's what we're saying.
Well, maybe. The other thing is, if you do some rewrites and I read those pages, I will never see this for the first time again. So I will always, from now on, go into it knowing the world you're creating. So I'm never going to be able to have that virgin read, that fresh read, right? Yeah. So everything's going to be tainted with what I already know and what I've already told you. So to get truly objective feedback, you're probably going to have somebody else give that to you at that point, right? Like, I'll be able to tell you how you've adapted to the notes, but I won't necessarily be able to give you completely fresh eyes read on it. You know what I mean?
Kind of thing, yeah.
That's also a huge challenge when it comes to mastering this craft, because the best readers out there, I know I can rely on this person for notes, but I can't go back to them for a sec. That's why you got to make it the best it can possibly be, refine, and make sure it's landing the way you want it to land. Then you give it to the reader who's going to give you the best notes on it, and they're going to give you the fresh eyes on the stuff you've already changed. You know what I mean?
Okay, right.
Anyway, that's just some advice from 20 years of giving feedback. So,
you don't give a script a second chance, personally?
It's not about not giving a script a second chance. So as a producer looking for a project, I'm going to be looking for things more than just what we're talking about here. I'm also going to be looking for things like, do I have the resources to make this at this point? Do I think there's a market for this at this point? Do I think I can get this into the hands of somebody that I think would be great in this role? Do I think I can get $1 million or $10 million or whatever we think the budget's going to be to try to make this film? There's a lot of different moving parts that come into play. All of that is only going to enter my head if the script is ready. So I always talk about production-ready screenplays. Like, if I believe writers should not be submitting their work to produce, not necessarily this show, but producers and production companies in general, until their project is what I call production ready, meaning it doesn't need any more development. We could literally go out and make it as is. It's tight. It's ready to go. Every little piece makes sense. It builds. It's got theme. It connects with the audience that it's trying to reach for. All that stuff. So as I'm looking for projects, if it's not production ready, that's already the most important thing. So that's kind of what this show tends to end up being about, because most of the scripts aren't really production ready yet, right?
Well, I mean, I'm saying if it's an easy fix and then makes it production ready, why wouldn't you? Get
the things we've talked about are not an easy fix.
It's not mine in particular. I'm just saying.
I have nothing I've talked about on this series. This is the 12th one. None of them are an easy fix. Like, it's going to take time, which is fine. The reality is a producer can't necessarily throw money at you to pay for those fixes. So a writer submitting their work that's not quite production ready, a producer gets that and goes, I like the idea. There's some interesting stuff here, but how are we going to get this production ready? I have to pay somebody that I know could do that, which is going to cost tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars. Or I can ask the writer to adapt to notes, but it's a little bit unethical to ask writer to do notes on something you're not paying them for. And then secondarily, if they haven't submitted something production ready, how do I even know that they're capable of incorporating the notes and making it production? We just don't know, right? So it's easier to say, let's see what else is on the stack. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's not. This is the challenge that writers don't fully grasp. But
I know what you mean. It's easier, but what I'm saying is also they're going to give you notes regardless. So how can it ever be production ready from the very first look?
No, a project can be production ready, but we still may want to make changes to it. The script itself can be production ready. I'll give you an example. Let's say you've written a script that has as its lead a 31-year-old male, right? Let's say you imagine, I don't know, who do you imagine in the lead of this?
Yeah, Chris Pratt.
Okay, let's say you imagine Chris Pratt as the lead in this story, right? And I go, well, I don't have access to Chris Pratt, but you know who I do have access to is Jennifer Lawrence. Can we adapt the story? Like, if it's not production ready for my needs if I'm looking for something for Jennifer Lawrence, right? Obviously. But maybe it could be made to be, right? You could flip the genders. There's lots of things we can do, right? Yeah. Possibly, if we wanted to. But the script itself is either production ready now or it's not. Just because we may need to or want to change it for our production logistics. Or maybe you imagine this as a $10 million film, but we need to make a $1 million film, but we like it. Could we stretch it? Could we maybe make it for 1.2? Right? Those kinds of thoughts. Well, we'd have to change this and change that and change that. Technically, no, it's not production ready for our needs in that moment, but it is a production ready script. See what I mean?
Yeah, I understand that point, but it seemed to me like, from what I understand, most of the notes are not logistical. They are directly related to the story, the things in the story what they want to change, not to fit necessarily a star or.
You're right. You're right. The notes that I've given you today are broader notes. They're more writing notes, I would say, more so than story notes. So the thing is, until the script comes in that way,
right?
So you're asking, would I give it a second chance then at that point? Well, Here's the thing. Usually I'm not going to give notes because there's too many scripts. Producers can't give notes to everybody. It's time consuming, as you can see from this hour. That's why I'm doing this show, right? So it's like I can show you what giving notes is all about, why it's so time consuming, or why most people don't give notes, right? But So you're never going to get those notes. So you're not going to know that you have these problems until you get notes from maybe a reader service or some writing group that you're part of or whatever it might be. Okay. And how do we know that those notes are sending you toward a production-ready end result? You don't. Most of the notes that you're going to get are not going to help you go to that, frankly. Because I see people giving notes, I'm like, oh my God, they did not give that note. That's not the note. That's not what you should be talking about here, right? Mm-hmm. It's a frustrating, challenging problem. And I've been dealing with this challenging problem for 20 years. I used to give these detailed script assessments for writers. I'd spend 15 hours on one script, making notes through the whole thing, and here's how we could change it, and blah, blah, blah. And they just go, yeah, not interested in that. My script is great. They get defensive. They walk away. Okay, well, good thing I did that. So I stopped doing that. I don't give out notes. I don't give one-to-one notes like that anymore.
Right.
I'm setting this up for that reason. So,
Right.
so the challenge that that you face as a writer is how do you get this right? You have to. There are nuances to learn way beyond what's taught, right? There's nuances to understand as far as how the story unfolds, what the reader's thinking when they're reading your project. Once you've nailed that, then we can assess it from is it viable? Now, would I look at this project? This is probably not the kind of project I'd personally make. That doesn't mean it's bad. I like a lot of the ideas in this. With the right producer, yeah, sure. If this is a production-ready project you're putting in their lap, sure. So if it was a project that was right up my alley, exactly the kind of thing that I would make, that I would want to make, would I give some notes, see what the writer did with those notes, and then review it? Yeah, possibly if I was that excited about the idea.
Okay.
But that's rare. I've encountered that in the past 20 years 3 times.
Well, those are the ones you've actually made into films?
No, because the writers went elsewhere.
Oh, okay.
This is the problem. So in nearly 20 years, my production company received nearly 30,000 project submissions. I've read nearly 7,000 screenplays. I think it was 22 projects that I thought this I would make. And all 22 of them were optioned somewhere else by the time I found them. All 22 optioned somewhere else. So if you write something that is ready and is connected with the right producer, yes, right, this is all doable. The writers are often under this mistaken idea that because my project's not connecting or selling or whatever, that it must be them. They don't know enough, or they don't see the genius in what I've wrote, or whatever it is. And I'm telling you right now, it's about understanding how they're connecting with what you've written and making sure that you're presenting it in a way that they're experiencing the story that you've created, and that story then takes them on that journey, and they can see it, and it's marketable, and they see how they would make it. You get it in the hands of the right producer, it's a go.
Okay. Okay, I mean, that's all good advice.
There's my rant for the day. Anyway, okay, so we're gonna leave yours at that. I hope you. Okay. I hope this is all good. You happy with this?
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, I know we started off a little rocky, but I'm glad we got there in the end. At the end of the day, I want you to succeed, man. I want you to. I think there's certain promise in this, and I think for the right producer, production company, there's something here. You know.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's good to hear. Actually,
yeah, you know, it's not there yet though, and you have to always be open to going that next mile and developing further. You know what I mean? If you do that, I can't say for sure it's going to happen, but you got to do that at least to find out. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much for sharing your pages. I know it's not always the easiest thing to do, to have some asshole, tell you what's wrong.
I watched some of your other videos on YouTube, and some of the stuff you say makes a lot of sense as far as getting the agent and writing fast. I really enjoyed that video about writing fast. Yeah.
Well, you should do the fast screenplay system if you want to do that.
I watched it for a while.
All right, cool. Well, thank you, Keith. I'm going to say thank you for that. And,
thanks to everybody that joined us.
Definitely. Thank you. So hopefully for everyone else that makes sense. We've gone a little bit long with that, but I think there's good stuff in there. So I think it's probably good that we did. Here's the thing. My take on Keith's initial reaction was a certain defensiveness, which I said. So this is not new, but I do want to say that as a writer, you have to understand that people want you to succeed. Producers want you to succeed. Producers are desperate to find extraordinary material, but they're desperate to find extraordinary material. They're buried under stuff that is not usable, stuff that's nowhere near what we've covered in this series. And they're also buried in a lot of stuff that's kind of like this one, where there's a whole lot of promise here, but there's just that much level of work to be done on it that it has to be a no. And that's nothing personal, and it's nothing that you should be scared of or afraid of or run away from. If anything, if you want to succeed at this, just go into it, figure out what is it that's not connecting? What is it that I'm seeing that they're not seeing? Because in your head how awesome your story is. In your head how if they understood this, man, we'd be in. We would make this deal happen. But they're not seeing it for some reason. Don't take it as a personal affront or that the doors will never open up to you or any of that stuff. Take it as, why are they not connecting? How is it that they're not connecting? And what do I have to do to bridge that gap? And that requires opening the mind to the idea that maybe I haven't quite delivered in the way that I think I've delivered. Because how the line reads happen. What all the meanings are behind everything. The reader just doesn't. So I want to give you a nice little example. We're going to jump over and I'm going to read the first 3 pages of the Shawshank Redemption. Now, ironic that we've had this conversation now because this shows you exactly what I've been talking about through this. We have a whole page, a whole 2 pages. The opening 2 pages are almost all action description. And yet it's so compelling and the image order is so solid and it's building. It's not even, it's arguably not that tied into the rest of the story. I mean, it's the setup for the rest of the story, but it's that whole idea of going to the water and the water's not coming out before going for presidency, right? Like you're starting with this little thing and then it's building into this bigger thing. That is narrative. That is storytelling, right? So let's jump over to the Shawshank Redemption and let me show you these pages and we'll see what you think. And hopefully this will make this idea clear. Interior cabin night, 1946. A dark, empty room. The door bursts open. A man and woman enter, drunk and giggling, horny as hell. No sooner is the door shut than they're all over each other, ripping at clothes, pawing at flesh, mouths locked together. He gropes for a lamp, tries to turn it on, knocks it over instead. Hell with it. He's got more urgent things to do, like getting her blouse open and his hands on her breasts. She arches, moaning, fumbling with his fly. He slams her against the wall, ripping her skirt. We hear fabric tear. He enters her right then and there, roughly, up against the wall. She cries out, hitting her head against the wall, but not caring, grinding against him, clawing his back, shivering with sensations running through her. He carries her across the room with her legs wrapped around him. They fall onto the bed. Camera pulls back, exiting through the window, traveling smoothly outside. Exterior cabin, night. 1946, to reveal the bungalow, remote in a wooded area, the lover's cries spilling into the night. And we drift down a wooded path, the sounds of rutting passion growing fainter, mingling now with the night sounds of crickets and hoot owls. And we begin to hear faint music in the woods, tinny and incongruous, and still we keep pulling back until a car is revealed, a 1946 Plymouth, parked in a clearing. Interior Plymouth, night, 1946. Andy Dufresne, mid-20s, wire-rimmed glasses, 3-piece suit. Under normal circumstances, a respectable, solid citizen, hardly dangerous, perhaps even meek. But these circumstances are far from normal. He is disheveled, unshaven, and very drunk. A cigarette smolders in his mouth. His eyes, flinty and hard, are riveted to the bungalow up the path. He can hear them fucking from here. He raises a bottle of bourbon and knocks it back. The radio plays softly, painfully romantic, taunting him. You stepped out of a dream. You are too wonderful to be what you seem. He opens the glove compartment, pulls out an object wrapped in a rag, lays it in his lap and unwraps it carefully, revealing a .38 revolver, oily, black, evil. He grabs a box of bullets, spills them everywhere, all over the seats and floor, clumsy. He picks bullets up off his lap, loading them into the gun, one by one, methodical and grim. 6 in the chamber. His gaze goes back to the bungalow. He shuts off the radio. Abrupt silence except for the distant lover's moans. He takes another shot of bourbon courage, then opens the door and steps from the car. Exterior Plymouth, night, 1946. His wingtip shoes crunch on gravel, Loose bullets scatter to the ground. The bourbon bottle drops and shatters. He starts up the path, unsteady on his feet. The closer he gets, the louder the lovemaking becomes. Louder and more frenzied. The lovers are reaching a climax, their sounds of passion degenerating into rhythmic gasps and grunts. Woman off screen. Oh God, oh God, oh God. Andy lurches to a stop, listening. The woman cries out in orgasm. The sound slams into Andy's brain like an ice pick. He shuts his eyes tightly, wishing the sound would stop. It finally does, dying away like a siren until all that's left is the shadow gasping and panting of post-coitus. We hear languorous laughter, moans of satisfaction. Woman off-screen continued, oh God, that's so good. You're the best I ever had. Andy just stands and listens, devastated. He doesn't look like much of a killer now. He's just a sad little man on a dirt path in the woods, tears streaming down his face, a loaded gun held loosely at his side. A pathetic figure, really. Interior courtroom, day, 1946. The jury listens like a gallery of mannequins on display, pale face and stupefied. DA, off screen. Mr. Dufresne, describe the confrontation you had with your wife the night she was murdered. Andy Dufresne is on the witness stand, hands folded, suit and tie pressed, hair meticulously combed. He speaks in soft, measured tones. It was very bitter. She said she was glad I knew, that she hated all the sneaking around. She said she wanted a divorce in Reno. DA, what was your response? Andy, I told her I would not grant one. DA refers to his notes. I'll see you in hell before I see you in Reno. Those were the words you used, Mr. Dufresne, according to the testimony of your neighbors. Andy, if they say so, I really don't remember. I was upset. DA, what happened after you and your wife argued? Andy, she packed a bag and went to stay with Mr. Quentin. DA, Glenn Quentin, the golf pro at the Falmouth Hills Country Club. The man you recently discovered was her lover. Andy nods. Did you follow her? So those are the first 3 pages of Shawshank. You can see why this story is so, how this story starts. Here's what I want to show you. A dark, empty room. The door bursts open. Image, right? A man and a woman enter, drunk and giggling. Image. Horny as hell. Building. No sooner is the door shut than they're all over each other. Building, ripping at clothes, pawing at flesh, mouths locked. We see passion, but we built it, right? We 4 lines, and we've gone through a narrative. Like, we're seeing event after event happen. He gropes for a lamp, tries to turn it on, knocks it over instead. Hell with it, he's got more urgent things to do. We're seeing this passion build. It's almost this animal magnetism passion going on. He enters her right then and there. I mean, it's forceful and it's raw, and in that way it's a little bit shocking, right? So because it's a little bit shocking, when we meet him later down here and he sees it and he hears it, that the shock of it, we will feel the shock of it too when it dawns on us that that's his wife in there, right? So we have this whole sort of scene, we pull back, we have this very slow, mellow, generally, you know how I feel about camera moves, but Frank Darabont wrote it, Frank Darabont directed it, so he's allowed to put camera moves in his script. But we reveal the bungalow, we move down the wooded path, we hear the sounds of the bugs and the owls, and then we hear the music start. And we see the car. We see him getting drunk in the car. So when I talk about image order, this is what I mean. We're having each image builds on the picture. There's no point in this where you're ever confused about anything that's going on. There's no point where you have to figure something out, or where later in the story, suddenly what you read 3 paragraphs ago makes sense. This is probably one of the bigger mistakes that writers make, is because you're trying to reveal something, you're creating or unwittingly allowing to be created confusion along the way until the reveal snaps it all together. But that's not how a great reveal works. A great reveal is building and building and building so that after we have that scene and that passion, and then we reveal the bungalow, and then we reveal that it's in the middle of nowhere, and then we reveal the music, and then we reveal the car, and then we reveal him in the car, and then we reveal him drunk in the car, and then we reveal the gun, right? So we're adding image on top of image on top of image on top of image, and then we see him get out of the car, We see him. He's clearly got the gun. He's at the right place at the right time. He's walking up. He hears them, and then he just sort of stands there pathetically. And then we cut straight to the courtroom where he's on trial because he was. Where were you on the night your wife was murdered? Right. We don't know if he killed her at this point. And throughout the story, it's played as this ongoing, we don't know if that's the case. But so they're setting up this duality right here in the initial scene. So his response is when he says it was bitter, she said she was glad I knew, she wanted a divorce, I told her I would not grant one. We hear the DA say, I'll see you in hell before I see you in ruin. That certainly sounds like something a murderer would say, right? So that's what your neighbor said. If they say so, I was upset. I don't remember. Maybe you killed somebody when you're not aware of it. You're blind with rage. All that. Talk about the golf pro. Okay, now we have context for the scene we just saw. If you guys have seen the movie, as you probably have, you know that it goes on to. Isn't it convenient that there was no gun found? I find it decidedly inconvenient that the gun was never found, right? When you threw it away into the river. And then that sets us up to go into, hey, you're sentenced to prison for life sentence or 3 years term or whatever that was. So I used to teach this script, so I know the script really, really well. I know sort of what happens where, and I know all the mechanics of it. It's a perfect example of a classic 3-act structure that's been subverted to a degree where the character you think is the central character actually is not the other character. Anyway, so it's got a fascinating structure, and there's a whole lot to it, which we could go into. But the thing that I want to focus on today is that those first 3 pages are really establishing and setting up this situation. You could just very easily have, they're in the woods, the couple in the woods are screwing, and he walks up, and you could very easily just tell you could basically just reveal what happens in that story, in that situation, and it wouldn't have the same emotional component. And so one of the things I've been trying to get to with this series is to really explain that every word you use matters. Every word you use puts an idea in the reader's head. When you have the talk of them ripping at each other's clothes and using strong language like that, he can hear them fucking from here. Like when you use that, there's a rawness to some of that language, right? So when you realize he's on trial for murder, on maybe some part of you goes, ooh, he was, he would have seen rage at that moment because the words have put that feeling in you. So when a reader's reading your script, they're always looking for those kinds of clues. So it's not about over-describing a scene. It's not about describing the curtains or the lamp breaking. The lamp breaking is an irrelevant detail to the larger story, but what it does do in that moment is it pulls us into this scene. We have this sense of what this passion is, and at the end of that scene, oh God, you're the best I ever had, and that's the thing that he hears. That's the kind of thing that sends a guy in the 40s who's drinking with a gun in his pocket to murder, right? So it puts us in a position when we're watching the story that, oh, maybe he did do it, or are we watching a guy who did it, or are we watching a guy who didn't do it? He's got this weird smirk that he does. I think if you guys have seen it, he has this weird sort of smirk through some of the story where you're like, he might have done it, right? Like the first time you see it. So this is what we really want to make sure that those first pages are about. You don't necessarily have to introduce the breadth of your story yet, but you do need to pull the reader in, and you do need to set the stage, and you need to draw us in with your not just what's happening in your scene, but the language that you use to describe it and establishing it firmly and solidly so that it's a journey that we want to go on. Patrick says, I've been reading a lot of Aaron Sorkin works. I'm reading some episodes of The Newsroom. In my opinion, he's the king of dialogue. He's the king of dialogue, but one of the complaints against him is that it's not necessarily naturalistic dialogue. It's very distinctive dialogue. You can hear Aaron Sorkin dialogue and know it's Aaron Sorkin dialogue, which I don't necessarily think is a problem. It's a stylistic choice. I think he's a fantastic writer. I'm a big fan of what he writes. but know that it's not necessarily the kind of writing that calls attention to itself is not going to necessarily be appropriate for every story. So it's really about understanding what you're going for. Do I have any recommendations on good dialogue writers? Not off the top of my head. And I don't necessarily want to point, I mean, if you point out Aaron Sorkin, I can go, I like Aaron Sorkin too. But I don't necessarily want to like point out like, I don't know if you guys know this. If you know me at all at this point, you probably do know, but I'll repeat. I'm not necessarily big on giving examples too much. Even when I do the examples of the 3 pages of Shawshank or the other scripts that we've done throughout this series, my fear is that you're going to then emulate the style of the example. My goal for every writer is to have you find your own unique voice, to find to tell the story in the way that only you can tell the story, because you're going to have, just like Aaron Sorkin has his own voice, you're going to have your own voice. It's in there somewhere. You have to do a lot of writing and a lot of practicing and develop your style and try things and see what works and what doesn't, and find your voice. You have to find your originality, but it can be found, and my worry is giving you an example is going to make you become an emulator rather than an innovator. And ultimately, the best stories are the ones that we discover, and it's like, where has this person been all my life? This is extraordinary. I want to make this, and everyone else is going to love it too. So Patrick also, I think it was Patrick, who had a question earlier about, we talked about it before we started the episode, about bold slug lines in a script, and I just wanted to address that briefly. In classic screenwriting, there's never any bold used, ever. It should all just be the words on the page. And part of that is that when a reader's reading your script, we're in screenplay mode in our brain. There's like once you read enough scripts, a couple hundred scripts, you think differently when you're reading something in script format. You think cinematically. And so anything that bucks the convention pulls you out of that and makes you notice this thing, right? So for the longest time, bold was not acceptable. Today, scripts tend to be passed around a lot more as PDFs than as printed scripts. And as a PDF, the bold slug line is often a nice way to subtly indicate the new scene. So in general, I would say bold slug lines are acceptable these days. I would say if your it's a judgment call. I still generally prefer not to, but it's also maybe an old school thing. I don't know. So, but generally speaking, that you can. So, the thing to remember is that there are no rules per se. It's really more of what's going to give the reader the strongest experience. And if the reader's someone who's used to reading hundreds and hundreds of scripts, you want to make sure that you're fitting into that thing that already taps into that experience that they're prepared to have, right? So if you do things that you could write a script on the back of a piece of paper, right? And here's my script. But that's going to not give them that same experience. Their brain's trained to look in this way. So that's why we kind of want to fit the format, generally speaking. All right, they're talking about their favorite Hitchcock films now. So we have gone very, very long in this episode, but I think there's a lot of really good stuff here. I think Keith's script served as a really great example for a lot of things that a lot of writers need to understand. So I really hope that you guys understand that all of my comments are. I can't help you rewrite your script because I don't know all the details of your story. I can't help you. I can't tell you what choice to make because it's your story. You need to make the choice that's right for you. But what I can do is I can show you what someone who's reading it for the very first time with an eye towards, is this something that I could make? I can tell you what's going through my head from that perspective. And at the end of the day, it's that person and that perspective that you need that person to experience your story the way you imagine it in your brain. So understanding that perspective is, I would argue, crucial. So I do hope that you will watch all these episodes, maybe rewatch all these episodes, and perhaps join us again for season 2. If you have pages that you want to send in, thefeedbackloop.co/submit has all the instructions for how to submit your work. Hopefully Keith and others who've had it done will tell you it's not so scary. I'm trying to help. I might not always be right, but I'm trying to help. So hopefully you've enjoyed this season. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next week on the Feedback Loop.